of Destra Consulting Group. We have been partnering with organizations for over 30 years in the areas of change management, process improvement, and leadership development. And I'm very happy to be here with all of you today to talk about cultivating up today, how we're feeling today. And we'll move along and talk a bit about that. So we all show up to learning, to each experience in different ways, depending on the day, depending on what is on our calendar, what's on our schedule, depending on what's going on in our home and family life. So we could have anything from tired, I didn't have a good night's sleep, to distracted. I have other things going on in my life, in my work that are distracting me. So I'm not fully present for this moment, for this learning experience. And what we'd say is that today and every day is an opportunity to learn. And so we really want to show up in a way that we will learn the most and we are most present. So I would like you to hold that thought about how you personally showed up, and then share, that having worked with hundreds of adult learners over the past 20 years, we typically know that we show up as one of 4 types. So I love for you to listen to this and think about if any of this speaks to you personally. So the first type of learner that we might find is called the prisoner. Now, this hopefully is not anyone here on our call today, but sometimes this happens when it's a work, training, or development. We're required to participate. It's mandatory. And we're thinking, I don't want to be here. I want to be doing real work. I feel trapped in this learning situation. So this is one possibility. The possible opposite of that is the vacationer. Oh, I have the opportunity to just relax and lay back and not work very hard. I'll put on my out of office email, but I'm not going to do very much in terms of learning in this environment. I'm just going to enjoy myself. The third type that we talk about, and I've been told I look a bit like this woman, however, this is not me, is the critic. And the critic is thinking, oh, I know everything about this topic already. I'm an expert in this field. There's nothing new for me to learn here. And the critic spends time thinking about what's wrong. How can I pick this presentation apart, or the presenter? So there are 3 types of learners. And what we invite you and everyone we work with is to be the 4th type of learner. And that's the explorer. So the explorer is open and curious, right? And so that's a very different approach. And we have the ability to cultivate this mindset, to be open and curious. And our ability to approach each day and each learning experience this way truly enriches our lives. So the question then is, how can we cultivate a learning mindset? So that is where we're going to go. So I would ask, how many of you have heard of a growth mindset? And if you've heard of a growth mindset, just use the raise your hand emoji along the bottom here in Google Meet. But how many of you have heard of a growth mindset? So we're going to talk a little bit about this research. So Carol Dweck from Stanford University has done the research on the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And so you may have heard of her research. She's written several articles as well as a book. And it's become a very important construct in parenting as well as in primary education. And really, it's important for all of us as learners and in experiencing our lives. So let's take a look at the differences between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And we'll start with talking about that fixed mindset. So if we are a person who is approaching life, approaching learning with a fixed mindset, we're really saying that we already know who we are and that who we are does not change. So an example here is, I'm not creative, all right? And just saying, that's the way it is, that part of me is not going to change. So taking that, we really, if you have a fixed mindset, you really just want to stick with your strengths. You don't want to go outside of your comfort zone. You really stick at what you are good at, what you feel your strengths are. And another really important characteristic of a fixed mindset is that you're not open to receiving feedback from others, whether it's constructive or negative. You don't take in any new information or data. You just move forward. And then the last one is really about, with a fixed mindset, your willingness to take risk. And if you have a fixed mindset, you're very risk averse. You want to avoid failure at all costs. So having talked about the characteristics of a fixed mindset, do any of those sound familiar to you, whether for yourself, for a family member, for a child, for your partner, or even a colleague? So it's important to know where people are coming from. And then we'll talk about the growth mindset, which is really where we're going today. So if we have a growth mindset, we really have a different set of beliefs about ourselves. And so if I have a growth mindset, I believe that intelligence and talent are things that I can develop. They're not innate. I can learn to be that way. If you have the growth mindset, you believe that effort, hard work, is truly the path to mastery, to learning things. And you also believe that failure is a part of learning. So you see failures as learning opportunities. And finally, you really welcome challenges. So challenges are seen also as opportunities to learn. So at this point, it's very important to talk about, well, what is it that we can do specifically to cultivate this growth mindset? And I meant to say this earlier. I certainly welcome any of your questions or comments in the chat as we move along. So to cultivate a growth mindset, there are 6 very simple things that we can put into practice, that we can do. And the first one, whenever we're in a learning experience or we set a goal and we're moving toward a goal, we can acknowledge our progress. Even if we've just made one small step, we've made some small piece of progress, we want to take a moment and acknowledge that we have moved in the direction that we would like to move in. So that's the very first part. The next part, which is very important, is to seek feedback. Yeah, I will get to your question in just a moment. I love that question. We want to seek feedback from those around us. So a great way to do that is to ask some simple questions. So it might be, what am I doing well? The other question might be, what could I do differently? What could I do better? And when we reach out to people and ask for feedback, then we get some very important data, we get some very important information that will help us on our path. So the next bullet, I really love this one, the power of yet. So when we're learning, when we've set a goal and we have not yet achieved the goal, or we have not yet achieved mastery, the way to frame this in our mind is to say yet. I haven't mastered this skill yet. And it holds out the possibility that you are going to master the skill or achieve your goal. Then we move to making mistakes. And so we talked about this with the growth mindset. We want to embrace mistakes, understanding that even if mistakes make us a little uncomfortable, they are the way that we learn. And most of us know that for children, right? You learn from making mistakes, and then you learn how to do it better or do it differently. And so now we reach the question that someone asked about, be kind to yourself. This is a very big question. And the question is, how do we do that? How are we kind to thyself? And so that really is about this mindset we're talking about. So one way to do that is to give ourself positive feedback. So I could give a small example. So before the presentation today, I was thinking, I don't use Google Meet very often. I usually use Zoom. And this technology is just a tiny bit different, but it's making me a little bit anxious. So instead of having a conversation with myself about, the technology, it may not work, and I really should know how to do this better, I'm going to have a different conversation with myself that certainly this is something I can do. I have the support of Dr. Betkar and his team. They are all very comfortable with this. I'm confident that I can do a good job. So that's one way that you might be kind to yourself. So be aware of whether you're speaking positively to yourself or are you speaking negatively to yourself. And then the last one is celebrate improvements. So on our learning journey or on our journey to a goal, along that path, we want to take time to celebrate even small wins or even small improvements, because that increases our motivation and it keeps us moving forward. And you can just celebrate it personally, do something nice for yourself, or you could celebrate that with others in your family or on your team. And I love this question, why do humans want to become successful in life? And I think that's a very big philosophical question, because success can be defined in so many ways. And I think it would go to much research about having purpose in our lives. And so that maybe each of us on this call, there are more than 30 of us, have a different purpose. And that may be how you have defined success. But that might be some answer to the why do we want to be successful. So we're going to look now at ways we can really prepare ourselves every day to show up with a learning mindset, with a growth mindset. So the very first thing that we want to address is, how do we manage our energy? So often we talk about managing time, and this is a different concept. So most of you are probably familiar with circadian rhythms. That's our sleep-wake cycle. And today we're going to talk about ultradian rhythms. And I don't know if anyone has heard of ultradian rhythms, but these are rhythms that we have biologically that occur every 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I didn't make a slide to show this, so I'm going to show you visual with my hand. But in an ultradian rhythm that we experience each day, we move up to a peak of peak performance in terms of our energy, and then we go down into a dip where we need to recover. And this cycle happens, as I said, about every 2 hours. So biologically, let's say you're working at your desk and it's about 2 hours and you start to feel distracted, or you start to feel hungry, or you yawn. Your body is telling you that you need to recover. So if you take recovery for 5 to 10 minutes, just get up, move around, do something different, make a phone call. By having some recovery, then you're prepared to move back up towards peak performance. There's been some great research done on this. There was a recent article in the Harvard Business Review where they looked at several companies that instituted this practice for their employees. So they encouraged employees to take recovery breaks every 2 hours. What they found in the firms that chose to do this was that they had both increased productivity and they had fewer errors. Their employees were making fewer errors in their work. So that's something really to think about. Connected to managing our energy is memory consolidation, and memory consolidation is all about sleep. All right, so we all know that we are supposed to get adequate sleep every evening. For adults, that's roughly 7 to 9 hours. But there's 20 years of sleep research that really shows us that sleep helps us improve our ability to memorize, to retain information, to creatively problem solve. And the barrier is that many of us think we can get by, we can perform on less than 7 to 9 hours. So I'll share in the United States, I'm not sure how this is in India or other cultures, but sometimes in the United States, it's a badge when people say, oh, I got 2 hours of sleep, or I got 4 hours of sleep. Well, that's not really a good thing. So the goal is to get adequate sleep so you can perform at peak performance. And research shows that around the world, roughly a third of us do not get enough sleep. So the next thing that helps us in terms of having this growth mindset is movement. So while we're learning, and I would do this now, but then you wouldn't see me for a moment, while we're learning, while we're working, it's important to incorporate movement in our day. So not just at one time when we have a workout, but often throughout the day. So maybe it's when you're taking that ultradian rhythm break. Every 2 hours, you get up, you walk around, maybe you go outside, but you get some physical activity. But movement does some wonderful things from a neuroscientific perspective. So when they look at the brains of people who are moving while they're learning, they see different areas of the brain ignite. And also when we're moving, excuse me, then we also are developing different parts of the brain at the same time. And movement while we're learning also helps to lower any stress or anxiety that we have in the moment. So it's a wonderful thing to keep in mind. And I do see this question, and we'll have a chat about that closer to the end. And mindfulness. So there is just wonderful research about mindfulness and how this helps us cultivate a learning mindset. So whether it is meditation or sitting quietly or prayer, 10 minutes each day of mindfulness has some amazing benefits for us. So better sleep, which we've talked about, sharpened focus for the tasks that we have at hand, insightfulness, self-acceptance, and enhanced learning and work performance. I will share a wonderful TED Talk with you in the resources about the benefits of at least 10 minutes of mindfulness each day. So as we reach the close of our presentation on cultivating a learning mindset today, I would share this checklist. And there is power in changing even one small thing. So maybe there's something you can do differently to manage your energy. Maybe it's taking one of those recovery breaks every 2 hours. Maybe there's something you can do for your sleep, like go to bed at the same time and wake up each day at the same time. Maybe there's a way that you can incorporate more physical movement into your day just by getting up and taking some small walks, or if you're more energetic, doing something like jumping jacks. And another option, as we mentioned, would be to practice mindfulness. So incorporate meditation or prayer, or just sitting quietly or walking thoughtfully is also mindfulness. And you may find some big benefits from that. So in conclusion, the idea is that we want to show up the way that we want to. All right, ready to learn, ready to experience. I'm going to share one last tip for you about showing up the way you want to. And this is from my business coach, Jane Midgley. But she shared that, and I do this every day. So before every meeting, before every call, before every presentation, I take 1 minute to set my intention for how I want to show up. And I just use 3 adjectives, and they're different for each situation. But I have mine, I write them on a Post-it note that I put next to my laptop. And so the way I wanted to show up today was excited, enthusiastic, and engaged. So I hope that I accomplished that for you. Here are the resources. I mentioned Carol Dweck's book. There's some articles about sleep and some ideas about movement, and also the TED Talk about mindfulness. And also someone shared in the chat some interesting link about mindfulness online course. And so with that, I just want to thank you so much for your time and attention. I would ask you to connect with me on LinkedIn or just send me an email. You're also welcome to visit my website at Destra Consulting. So once again, Dr. Bette and team, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The wonderful explanation you have made here. So very, very thankful to you. It's a time for discussion with the keynote speaker. I request all the participants, if you have any query, would like to share something, please come ahead, dear participants. Shukla sir, please. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Bette sir, Prashant sir, and good evening, ma'am. I think for you, it's good morning over there. So, wonderful presentation you have made. Many of the times in our schools and the colleges and universities, we are imparting education, but how much they are really receiving, that is a big question. So that learning mindset is one of the very important part, what I feel, as we are educationists. And another thing is, we as a medical field person, the patient should receive, the information, what we are talking to them. They should receive, there should be a learning attitude with the patient also. Many of the time it happens that only medication for everything what we feel. But I think that even counseling and, what the suggestions we are giving, they are also more important they are more important than medication. So the learning attitude, if it is there, we have to develop that learning attitude. Everyone should have learning attitude. Of course, the listener as well as the speaker both should have learning attitude. So we can receive also and we can give also. So that is one thing what I feel. I'm working in the communities and especially community medicine I'm working with. So I'm going with the villages and rural and tribal areas, industries, urban areas. Sometimes we are going for some work of the disasters. And so kind of work is there. But I think, what is important, it is not just helping people. We have to develop a learning communities, and that mindset has to come. If suppose I'm going in one village and telling them about something, it should not be for that day. They should learn and they should practice, and that is how, the right learning mindset should be there. It was a wonderful presentation what you had given, and I was going through various aspects then, and I was correlating with my own profession. It was a wonderful presentation you have made. My question is, nowadays the students are having a different mindset when they are sitting in front of us. I'm a professor. I'm working since last 30 years, and 20 years back the mindset was little different, and now the mindset is little different. Maybe the social medias, maybe the education, maybe the information available, and their learning ability is, that understanding ability is reduced. People are, they want ready material. They want to write down only. They don't want to understand. So that is how it goes, And what you have said perfectly, we should be kind to oneself. We should, we should take a nap, or we should do meditation or walk. And, I think that is a time, I remember one of the books, Shiv Khera's book, sharpen your instrument, always take a break and sharpen your instrument so you can work much better further. So that is very, very correctly you have said. So thank you very much. Please comment what I said about my, observation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shukla. I loved hearing about your experience. I share your experience working with younger people today. I've seen a huge change over the last 25 years. And I would say one of the biggest changes is the attention span. So it used to be, and I'm sure for those of you who teach on this call, it used to be that students could do a lecture, be engaged and listening for an hour. And now I find that the information needs to be changing maybe every 10 minutes. So it has made me change how I work when I teach. And I think many of the things we talked about today are things that would be valuable for us to be teaching the students. So instead of looking at our iPhone all the time and being fed dopamine rushes from our likes and the information coming at us, to help them learn the power of putting that phone aside, stepping away from the screen, learning to take a meaningful break, whether it's movement or mindfulness, I think that can really help improve some of their performance and ability to learn. But thank you so much for your insightful comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful explanation.
Anybody else? If any question or would like to comment something, please come ahead. So thank you so much, Honorable Dr. Swan Shukla sir, for the insight and asking a nice question. And ma'am have explained it very well. Thank you. Now I request the chief organizer of the series, Honorable Dr. M. Ambedkar sir, to conclude your speech. Please, sir. Principal sir, please unmute. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, we are getting. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I am moving ahead for a formal vote of thanks. Sri Kumaraswamy Mahavidyalaya Avsa, District Latur, basically in Maharashtra state, is organized an internationally conference. The topic for today's presentation was very significant, as our principals have said now, that cultivating a learning mindset. Now this topic is very useful to all the students, and keynote speaker Honorable Bette Smith ma'am, who have covered all the aspects regarding the topic. What do you mean the learning mindset? How to develop learner's mindset? Then growth mindset, and how do you cultivate the habit of learning, as well as memory consolidations, movements, mindfulness, all these terms you have completed in your lecture. Also detailed lecture in the series. So I'm very, very thankful to you, madam. You have paid your valuable time to the session. So thank you so much. And I also thanks the chief organizer, the session chairpersons, Honorable Dr. M. Ambedkar sir. Especially thanks Dr. Swani Shukla sir for the nice interactions with the keynote speaker and also sharing some views in the session. And at last, I should not forget all those dear attendees who joins regularly to the session. So thank you so much once again to you all. Kindly, I request now, please fill the feedback link which is given in the chat box. Now I declare, with the kind permission, today's session is over. Thank you so much. Thank you, Betty ma'am, once again.
Thank you. Thank you.